Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Pup and Away podcast. My name is Stephanie. I'm a certified dog trainer, canine behaviorist, and canine nutritionist in San Antonio, Texas, and the very proud owner of Pup and Away, where we specialize in pet care with the behavioral edge. It's always a mouthful. Today, I am joined by Toni Shelaske. She has been feeding raw for about 20 plus years and has owned and operated Healthy Pet Products, which is a retail store in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and also in Port Charlotte, Florida. So welcome, Toni. Tell us a little bit about you and kind of where you got started. What are you doing now? Like, who's Toni?
Well, thanks, Stephanie. I appreciate you having me on. I love to talk about canine health and wellness. And a lot of the things that I say also relate to cats. It just kind of gets lost in the translation, but it's very similar. So I've been in the pet industry probably about 25 years. I had my own pet sitting business for about 8 years.
Cool.
And like you said, I've been feeding raw for it's 27 years. I calculated exactly.
That's awesome.
So what was interesting was when I was a pet sitter, I saw a lot of issues with my customers' dogs and cats that I was not seeing in my own. So obesity, diabetes, autoimmune, skin issues, hot spots, digestive issues. You could go on and on and on, right? So, I knew that it could be helped with diet and supplements and everything. So, ironically, there was a locally owned natural pet food store here in Pittsburgh, and I lived very close to it. They didn't carry raw food, but they carried better kibble.
Okay.
And I still shopped it and got treats and would take my dog and the whole thing. And I could walk there, which was nice. And the owners one day said, "Hey, I think we're going to relocate to Florida. We're not going to move the store with us. We're thinking about selling." So this was back in 2008. And because I had such an extensive retail management background, I decided to buy the business.
That's awesome.
So I did. And then one store led to another. We increased square footage. We went from one freezer to two freezers to three freezers to walk-in freezers. So it's been quite a journey, and we've impacted a lot of pets in the past 16 years positively.
Yeah. That's amazing. Can you talk a little bit about the difference between, from a customer standpoint, like why should a customer or consumer, any pet parent, consider going to a small boutique, small business pet store versus going to somewhere more nationally owned like a PetSmart or a Petco? What are some big differences there?
So I think there's a lot of differences, but service is the biggest difference, and education. The big box stores, I think no matter how hard they try to educate their staff, they have much more turnover. They don't have as much passion. But if you walk into an independently owned pet food store, they are in it because they believe in what they sell. They've done the research in it. They've seen the differences in their own pets. They just know so much more, and they really truly care. And it ends up being like a family. I mean, you just develop relationships. And the pet food world, I mean, it just becomes a journey of education and change.
Yeah, absolutely. My experience, I mean, I have a lot of, being a small business owner in the pet industry space, I have made a lot of connections locally. And my experience with all of those owners who are, the small boutique owners is exactly what you said. They're passionate. They're the ones that are also behind the counters. They're curating these products so specialized to where I can pretty much tell any client, like, go over here to this boutique. Anything that you find there is going to be a good option. Yeah. Whereas if you go to, those big box stores, you really do, still as a consumer, still have to do your education, your research. And I recommend that for anyone, no matter where it is that you're shopping. But if you don't want to be doing as much research, or already just be looking at a highly curated product shelf, definitely the small businesses is the place to go. not only are they educated in their products, but they purposefully chose those products to be in their store, which I think is pretty cool.
Absolutely.
So you've been in the industry for quite some time.
Yeah.
And obviously you've been feeding raw for 27 years. That's amazing. So I feel like you've probably seen a lot of different changes happening. Can you kind of speak on some of those trends, whether from also like a small business owner standpoint, but also just things because you're also a consumer of these sorts of products. Like what sort of differences have you seen from back then to now?
There have been so many changes in the industry over the past 16 years. I can't even begin to say how overwhelming it is for, I think, pet parents and pet store owners to really weed through all of the information on the internet, all of the information the vets telling us, all of the information. We as natural pet food store owners, I mean, you're hearing the pretty much the opposite that what your vet tells you. And I am very frank with people, and I'm just like, listen, this is my side of it. Your vet is going to tell you the opposite, and you have to ultimately decide. But I started business right after that 2007 melamine massive pet food recall and all the deaths. So that really spiked the natural food market, right? So California Natural at that time was a very big brand and very true to their core. They were one of the first grain-free, Evo was the name of the food, one of the first grain-free kibble that was all natural. They were a great family company, but they aged out of the business, and they sold the business, and they sold to Purina. And I remember hearing horror stories across the country. Some pet store owners would just literally throwing their food in dumpsters.
Oh, wow.
And pulled the plug right away.
Yeah.
So, or when a pet food recall happens, you cut all ties with that brand. You're done with them. Like I've heard stories like that over the years. I never did anything like that, Stephanie. I kind of did okay, let's pull back a minute. Yes. Did I get rid of California Natural? I did, but I did it gradually. I educated the customer as to what's going on, why I don't support that brand anymore, because they still need that food to transition into something else. Do you know what I mean? So I never have done stuff like that. But the pet food recalls really impact a lot of people's decisions. And then we had DCM, where people were in a panic. And then we have, vets putting lists on Facebook, and that puts people into a panic, whether they're right or wrong. There's been so much change. And then, the freeze-dried category that came onto the market and exploded and is still growing leaps and bounds, and it's the most expensive category that you can spend on pet food. And I even tell people that, and they're like, well, they don't compute that. So, it's wild. And now we're with gently cooked.
Yeah.
So, it makes you wonder what's going to be next.
Yeah. Bunch of different stuff. I was actually I was listening to a couple of your podcast episodes, and you and your co-host were talking about like lab grown meat. And is that something that we're going to possibly see in the pet food industry as well? Or another category, vegan food. How do you feel about vegan food for dogs?
I do not support, and Emily Claire, my former co-host, she's a vegan.
Right.
So that was a great conversation. And I completely understand why humans choose to become vegetarian or vegan. It's all you, babe. You want to do it? You've got my full support, whether it's moral, whether it's health related, that's great. You've chosen to do that. You're a human being. You can choose to do that. A dog and a cat would never choose a vegetarian diet. Absolutely. And I don't care how much protein reading vegetables you put in that food. No. There's no way.
I completely agree. Just the type of nutrient density within animal product versus the phytonutrients and the plant products they're just two different things.
Yep.
We're missing a lot of essential amino acids whenever we're trying to do something like that, and no matter but like supplementation is really going to outbalance that for those dogs. One thing that you mentioned that I think is also another very interesting thing for people to consider when choosing to stop or choosing to shop at a small boutique, small business is more of the education component that you just mentioned, where you are aware of the different recalls that are happening. Not only just the recalls, but also when these brands are getting bought. That is not ever really big public news unless you are subscribed to a specific newsletter, like I'm sure the both of us are, to be in the know for all these different market changes. And those things are really important to know because just like you mentioned, when something gets bought by a bigger corporation, there's going to be changes in something, whether it's maybe the quality of the ingredients is different, maybe the ingredients as a whole is different. And so knowing people that are passionate about this industry to continue to learn and stay up to date with everything that's going on is something that you're going to find in those small boutiques and not necessarily at those big branches, which I think is very interesting. Are you finding that more and more people are trying to feed a fresher diet?
Yeah, I think that I mean my business has grown and grown and grown and grown
That's
and
awesome.
grown. New customers all the time, more questions every day. So I
Hmm.
do feel that that is still, you know, I don't even like to say the word trend. I think it's a movement.
Sure.
I don't think it's a fad.
Yeah.
Really don't. And same with humans. I don't think that it's a fad. I think it's a movement that we are
Hmm.
getting back to the basics.
Hmm.
So thankfully, I do feel that people are being advocates for their pets more, asking more questions, seeking out more answers. But I also think we're up against more chemicals. I still think the fight is there
Yeah.
majorly because we're
Yeah.
still seeing so much cancer and
Hmm.
so many issues that it's just absurd.
Absolutely. Well, it's good to know that more people are pushing for this sort of,
Yeah.
um, you know, feeding and diet. And I think also too, more of a change in lifestyle. For me, I know it started off with looking at what's in my dog food bowl, and then it grew into, okay, what are all the different things in my household
Yeah.
that are causing inflammation, not just for me, but for my dogs? What are the things that I'm doing to my lawn and all the different environmental exposures? So, as long as we can get someone to start asking questions about one thing in their dog's lifestyle, it can then start to grow a little bit. And that makes me excited because the more people want this, the easier it is going to be for it to be attainable for everybody. And I think
Correct.
that's super important. So you have 3 stores now, correct?
So I originally had 4 healthy pet product stores.
Okay.
I recently just sold 3 of them.
Gotcha.
They were its own entity. Those are my 3 stores in Pittsburgh.
Okay.
So I still have a store in Florida, and I don't even winter there or anything. It's a crazy story. I had a store manager relocate there. She had to
Gotcha.
drive almost an hour to get any decent pet food.
Wow.
And my brother didn't live far from there, and I have family there, sort of. So she's like, I think there's a good opportunity here.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how it happened.
Okay.
So that store's been open about 3 years. And I started my podcast about 2 years ago. And my grand plan with the podcast was I wanted to broaden my reach
Yeah.
other than just Pittsburgh and, one little store in Florida. I really want to, just like yourself, make people aware that there are better options
Yeah.
and what's happening to our pets is just not right. So
Yeah.
that's why I started the podcast. And I thought, well, if I can build this avenue of the business and I have some private label products as well, maybe I can get that to the point that I'm on my own and step away from, but still own healthy pet products. But I burned myself out of retail, to be honest with you.
It's a lot. I can only imagine. Lots of and just to run one store. So I mean, I'm more of a service-based business with a little bit of a small retail boutique in it. And I can't even imagine having more than one service-based like location. it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
But what are maybe some different trends, or are you finding that your clientele, your customers from Pennsylvania and Florida, like, do they differ, or are you kind of seeing the same trends no matter what part of the nation that they're in?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think that I even see differences from within my Pittsburgh stores
Oh, okay. Interesting.
with buying trends.
Okay.
So it's crazy. I
Yeah.
mean,
Every store has its own little
yeah, and you know
unique factors.
the most the area that makes they're the richest, I have the biggest gap. My most expensive pet food sells, and my least expensive pet food sells the most in
Oh,
the area
interesting.
that makes the most money.
Okay.
So it's you can't. I don't think you can make rhyme or reason out of it. Now
Yeah.
the Florida store, I can give you some enlightenment there. So the demographic there was older,
Okay.
and they're on Facebook. So when that Facebook list came out, we had customers walking in tears, thinking they were killing their dogs.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Yeah. They literally were talking people off the bridge.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's so interesting how much like social media impacts everybody in many aspects of their life, but even just I'm scared now that I'm feeding a food to my dog that is hurting them long term. And it's good that people care, but also like
Yeah.
it's okay, let's ask the questions.
Right.
Ask
Right.
the questions first. What
Right.
why what's going
Take a
on? Why
minute.
are you feeding that?
Take a
That's very
minute.
interesting.
Yeah.
So I know that one thing that you and I, when we kind of first met and chit chatted about, what are some things that I think we align a lot on a lot of different things.
Yeah.
But as you know, I am a certified behaviorist, and you yourself have also mentioned that you also believe that diet and nutrition plays a huge factor in our behavior and also our dog's behaviors, right? So from your standpoint, someone who's maybe more nutrition savvy than behavior savvy, so like me, I'm the opposite of that.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of just give me like your opinion about nutrition and behavior.
Sure. So just like right now, they're trying to eliminate the food dyes in our human food. They haven't even started to talk about pet food yet. So those dyes are known to cause hyperactivity in children. And they actually have the same effect on dogs. So if you're getting dog treats at the grocery store that are bacon strips or sausages, or they have all of those chemicals and dyes in them that have a direct impact on their behavior. So if you're feeding a kibble that has sugar in it, a lot of kibble, some kibble has food coloring in it. Those are going to affect behavior. Sugar affects behavior. It makes you jittery. So your dog is going to be jittery, and you get the sugar spikes. So if you have a solely kibble fed dog and cat, just like after you eat a heavy carb laden meal, you are full of energy and you feel great, and then you crash. And that creates cravings. When you're in that crash mode because your sugar drops, that's your body telling you you need more, you need more, you need more. So that same thing happens in our pets.
Absolutely.
So
And I think one thing that people don't realize too, obviously we're concerned about when the glucose levels are really high, and that's when you get that really big burst of energy, the hyperactivity, the dog that can't settle down. But you also mentioned the crash, right? When we hit that crash, people think like, oh, I would love for my dog to crash and just like sleep. It's not like a clean burn one way up and one way down. You start to get irritable. You start to feel anxious. Like it's not a clean, okay, let me go to sleep. It's a neurotic burn
yeah,
from all of that.
yeah,
And I love when we have dogs barking in the podcast. Why else would we have a dog podcast
I
and
know.
not hear a dog speak up? But it is just a very interesting conversation, and it's so interesting to me how much those things don't align. Whenever I tell a client like, "Hey, let's look at the dog food that you're feeding," so many people are like thrown off by that question. Like, why are we going to have a conversation about that? And I'm like, well, let's
Yeah.
think about what you eat and how it affects you and how you feel. And if you're irritable, you're anxious, like you're not making the best decisions and how you're going to react to something. The same thing happens with our dogs also. And then we were also just talking about it from behavioral standpoint, but also like how like behavior is also a biological thing, right? So if things are inflamed, not feeling well, if you have really bad gut, if there's dysbiosis there, we're already just starting, all the fire alarms are slowly ringing out to all the different organ systems, including the nervous system, which is where you're going to get your fight or flight. So you might
Yep.
have an aggressive dog or a reactive dog. We're not really spending a lot of time in that rest and digest, so we're not doing absorption of the nutrients that we're supposed to have, which then it's just like a vicious circle, a vicious cycle of it all,
I
which
wish
is
more
nuts.
trainers would have conversations like that. I mean, I know a couple locally that do, like their first class, the first puppy class, they go through food.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And I mean, everything's connected, right? So we have to take that into account. And also, we see so many more dogs with anxiety. CBD sells like crazy now because of all this anxiety. And I think part of it is diet. And I think part of it is so many people are first time dog owners since COVID, and they don't understand natural dog behavior. We're overly humanizing our dogs. We're not
Hmm.
letting them truly be dogs
Absolutely.
at times. Like they need the training, just like a kid needs to go to preschool to get ready for kindergarten. They
Hmm.
need the training to have confidence, which makes them adapt to different things that are happening in their environment and make them more comfortable. And yeah, we could go on and on and on.
We could be here all day. So I think another aspect of nutrition that you and I both align on very well is like digestion. And you kind of had mentioned to me before we got on that, if you have a client that's walking into your store for the first time and they just like have no idea where to start, you told me that you kind of hone in a bit more on digestion first. So why do you choose that to be your starting point?
Well, the interesting thing is when a customer walks into the store saying they're already to the point that they know that they're feeding them not so great food. They watched pet food or they saw something on somewhere. And I'm like, "Great. Okay. So your dog's not having any issues." And they're like, "Well, no issues at all. I just want to feed a healthier food." Okay, so your dog's stool is normal. It's solid every day, every time. Well, so the more questions I ask, the more things that come up. And I don't, if a dog has been eating Purina One or Beneful or whatever for 3 years, 5 years, I don't want to change that diet cold turkey or very quickly. I
Right.
want to address the gut first so that the dog does have a successful transition.
Okay, cool.
So I normally just recommend like a prebiotic or probiotic digestive enzyme type of situation first added to the kibble that they're currently feeding for a few days and then start to transition.
Gotcha, gotcha.
Because
What
I
are
don't
some of
want
your
I want it to be successful. So
Yeah.
I take it slow typically.
Yeah, and depending on, sorry, my computer keeps trying to do all sorts of weird restarts right now. Hopefully, we're still going. What are some of your favorite brands of pre and probiotics, or maybe what are some things that when you're choosing a product to carry on your shelf, what are some things that you're looking at to say like, yes, this one, but maybe no, not that one?
Yeah. So my favorite supplement line is in Clover.
Okay,
She's a biologist and owns the company. She's amazing. I've carried her products for about 15 years.
okay. I haven't heard of that
So,
one. I'll have to go look it up.
oh, she's the best. She's the best. She's been on my podcast probably 3 times. We've become close friends over the years.
Awesome.
And we're actually recording on Friday about women's history. So
Cool.
yeah, we're gonna just talk a little bit about women's history and then her career history and mine.
I love
So
that.
yeah. So anyhow, she's got a lot of supplements, but her product called Optigest, Optagest, is just a prebiotic with digestive enzymes. So she has this really cool video right on her website that it shows you. She puts a little bit of Optigest in a cup of oatmeal,
Okay.
and you can see it digest.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really cool. So she's a big believer in you don't want to overdo probiotics and
Mm-hmm.
always do probiotics.
Mm.
So a lot of times a prebiotic, which feeds the good bacteria and helps to multiply, is better because everybody's flora is different.
Mm-hmm.
So if we feed the flora and let the dog, and I take the product myself as well, let the dog multiply its own flora, repopulate, it commonly works better that way.
Gotcha.
So,
You're
and it's something
fertilizing the lawn instead of planting more sod.
exactly, exactly. And it's a
Very
product
cool.
you can feed long term
Gotcha.
if you want. So
Cool.
that's one
I
of my
love that.
favorites. The other one I really love is Digestol Plus, and that's a pro, a pre, and digestive enzyme, holistic pet organics.
Okay.
Yeah, you've probably heard of that one.
I actually haven't heard of that one
Oh
yet.
my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love learning new products and things.
Yeah, so these are ones that probably don't have a huge social media presence,
Okay.
or it's not gonna be the first one to pop up on Amazon.
Yeah.
These are ones that are really committed to the independence.
And that's what I find too. So sometimes, and I'm guilty of this myself, right? Whether it's a supplement that I'm looking for myself or something I'm looking for my dogs, if it's the first thing that pops up on social media, not that it's bad,
Right,
but
right,
it might not be just
right.
because Instagram told you this is the best one on the market does not mean it might not be the best one on the market. So it
Exactly.
really is good to still do a lot of research and again go talk to the independent business owners who know a lot more than just that brand that spent more money on their branding on social media.
Exactly.
It's a lot of things to yeah, I'm a very influenced person when it comes to social media, so I have to make sure I don't save my credit card on the internet, or else I just keep buying stuff, which is very interesting. So one thing that you had mentioned a little while ago is you do still carry kibbles in your store. And I think that whenever we have these sorts of conversations, some people receive it really well and they want to do a little bit better. Some people are overwhelmed by, I've been feeding a kibble my dog's entire life. Like, what am I doing wrong? And when I'm talking to a client about maybe transitioning them to a different diet, I'm not here to preach, you have to go raw, you have to do this, right? I'm here to meet the
Right.
client wherever they are. And I think you're the same way since you carry
Yep.
some kibbles in your store. So, what are maybe some other reasons that you decide to still carry a kibble, even though we might feel like it's not the best thing for our dogs? And then, what sort of brands do you still choose to carry?
So I choose to carry kibble still because from a budgetary standpoint, I don't think kibble will ever go away.
Yeah.
I don't think everyone on the planet can afford to feed fresh,
Hmm.
real, raw, cooked food, raw food, whatever. I just don't think it'll ever go away.
Yeah.
So I selectively choose, and here's Layla to steal the show.
Wow.
Yes.
Hi, Layla. She's like looking right into the camera. She's like, what's going on in there?
She's
I
a
love
ham.
it.
So, kibble. Okay, so obviously, made in the U.S., Canada, or New Zealand.
Okay.
Um, no chemical preservatives, no wheat, no corn, no soy, all of that, all of the things.
Hmm.
So, um, I carry from a budgetary standpoint, probably my most economical is Nutrisource,
Okay.
and the most expensive is Carnivore.
Yeah. Oh
And
gosh, that carnivore.
they'd probably even yell at me for putting it into the kibble
I was gonna
category.
say they say specifically we're not a kibble.
She would kill me. Maria would kill me. So I was one of their first retailers.
That's awesome. I
Yeah.
love their products so
So
much. Yeah.
David and Maria and I go way back. They were lovely people. But I carry Ziwi Peak, which is air
Mhm.
dried. I do the
Mhm.
Nutrisource. Had Champion,
Okay.
but gradually got rid of Champion once Purina bought them. Nutrisource from, of course, Signature,
Mm-hmm.
Lotus.
Oh, I haven't heard of that one yet.
So that's well, of course, Open Farm, what was Stella and Chewy's.
Ooh,
is
what do you
now,
mean? What was? I think I missed something
well,
there then.
they're in mass now,
They're in what?
mass market,
Oh, okay. That's one that I had missed. When did that happen?
very recently.
Okay, that I don't feel that bad.
Very recently. So,
Dang.
yeah, you're gonna see, and Honest Kitchen, same,
Okay. Yeah.
mass.
Dang.
So the CFO, are you familiar with the spaghetti sauce, the marinara sauce Rao's, RAO?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So he was the CFO for them and took them from very small to mass.
Okay.
He is now the CFO for Honest Kitchen. So he's going
Gotcha.
to do the same thing,
Yeah, yeah.
guarantee.
All lots of different changes strictly for the mindset of
Yep,
business
yep,
and what is it called when you have not overhead margins? That's the
yep,
word.
yep.
And not really focusing on what we're doing specifically for the dogs.
Yeah.
Interesting. I have to keep an eye out for that. We something that I did not have written in my notes, and I should have run this by you before I hit record. But I've heard you talk about it on your podcast. I know that you're going to give me a lot of good information here. Complete and balanced.
Huh.
What does it mean? What is it like, in the market? What does it mean? And how much bullshit is it?
It's a lot of bullshit. So, but let me first talk about us humans. Do we ever eat a complete and balanced meal ever in our lives?
Absolutely.
No. So why do we think our pets should?
Yeah. Yeah.
We complete and balance over time with our meals collectively.
Right.
So we have way too much focus on complete and balanced, way too
Hmm.
much.
Hmm.
And the only reason, and AFCO is the reason for it all. And we need synthetic supplements to make it complete and balanced.
Hmm.
And we don't want those synthetic supplements. We really
Absolutely.
don't.
Yeah.
So that's what I think about complete balance.
It
And I
is that
believe in
was
fasting.
it's such a struggle having this conversation, right? Because again, I don't know who's shouting it. I mean, I guess I do know who's shouting it from the rooftops that everyone needs complete and balanced. But how much a pet parent hears that is it blows my mind. Like I feel like that's only a term that I would know because I'm in the industry. But whenever I'm talking to people about home cooked meals, well, is it going to be complete and balanced? Uh, Probably not. But you don't eat a complete and balanced meal every single time that you're doing it, and that's okay. We're gonna, do it like you said, collectively over time, and it makes people so nervous.
Yeah,
And so when I sit down, I tell them, okay, let's talk about these standards and where they come from. Number one, we're basing this off of a minimum. Like the minimum amount of protein that AFCO says is 19% for dogs. Sure, your dog can survive on that, but they're not going to thrive on that. Second, how did we get these numbers to begin with? They tested 17 beagles in like a 3 week period, and as long as they didn't die, cool, that's the number that we're going to go with. And I may have gotten all those numbers wrong, and if
yeah,
you know those numbers off the top of your head, please correct me. But it's just it's crazy that's this not this that should just be the minimum, but we're choosing it to be the standard.
absolutely.
And exactly what you said, in order to get these minimums, we are now adding synthetic vitamins and minerals because for these ingredients to become a kibble, it has to be cooked to high held temperatures multiple times, which is just killing the nutrients.
Yep.
So when you look at the back of that bag and you see the second half of that list is usually just vitamin E, blah, 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 like all these different nutrients. You're like, oh, that sounds great. It sounds like a provitamin. No, all that shit's dead. Like it's not even doing anything. And then when we talk about the balance portion of it and how much these nutrients have a synergistic like connection with each other, when one's too high, it's going to affect the absorption rate of the other one. And that's also how we get we had this huge vitamin D
Yes.
toxicity a few years
Toxicity. Yes.
ago,
Yes.
right?
And then what if you have somebody that is like, oh my God, is supplement crazy and wants to feed a multivitamin on top of that? I don't even carry a multivitamin.
Mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm.
people are like, what do you mean you don't carry a multivitamin? Well, okay, this is one, and it's whole food sourced, and it's from in clover. So if you
Hmm.
really feel like your dog needs more than what you're giving, this is the only one I would recommend.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
mean, the multivitamin chews and all it's that's all marketing.
Right. Right.
And that's more that your dog's kidney and liver has to filter through. So give it a break.
Hmm.
Don't. We overdo, we overdo, we overdo. Adding goat's milk.
Yeah, I love that suggestion. Going for the goat's milk for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah, complete and balanced. I mean, and the thing is, I don't know if you've read Dr. Connor Brady's Feeding Dogs, his book.
No.
He has one line in there, and it's hilarious. And I should have highlighted it and pulled it up because I'm not going to do it any justice. But he says, complete and balanced. Wow, the geniuses in the Purina and the pet food industries, they sure got it right. They need to go talk to those dummies down at NASA. Because like we don't even have a complete and balanced thing to send, our astronauts up
Yeah.
into space. Like if it was something that could be done in a good way that we're
Right.
willing to feed it to humans, it's not it's just it's not like it's
That's an
possible it's
excellent
getting
point.
done, but it's not getting done the right way,
Yeah.
which is amazing.
Yep.
Is there anything else that you would like the listeners to hear about you, or just about feeding dogs, whatever it might be? But is there anything else you want to touch on?
I just think that we really should be our advocates for our pets and don't take, and not that there's anything wrong with what the vets are telling us, but don't take everything verbatim and
Hmm.
ask questions, and don't feel bad about asking questions, and get to the bottom of things. Listen to your gut. You know your dog, you know your cat. If you really think something's wrong, seek out
Hmm.
answers.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. You're like the vet is going to be the professional and the most informed about science and medicine, but you're the most informed about your dog. You know your dog better than anybody else, better than us, better than the vet. So advocate for your dog, no matter who you're talking to, no matter what pet professional it is that you're talking to.
And most of
Um,
our vets are now corporately owned, and you don't
that
even know it.
That is
So
absolutely insane. There was, I wish I could remember that statistic. It's like almost a good 60% of vets now, I think, are owned by some sort of,
I think it's higher than that.
it's the higher, is it like
I just
75?
did a podcast on it last week,
Oh gosh.
and local people that have an interesting, really cool service for pets did a lot of research on it, and yeah, I think it's higher than that.
Dang. Just little by little, right? They're just going and
Yeah.
you just see the name change one day. I remember I went, unfortunately I had to take my kiddo to a like a urgent care hospital. She got stung by a scorpion and I didn't know what was going on. So I took her and I loved them. They were great. And then I started to tell my clients like, hey, if you ever need somebody, like go here. And then tried looking it up online, and sure enough, they had changed their name to, a more corporate-y
Yeah.
one. And I was like, oh,
Yeah.
damn.
And they're not all changing their names anymore.
Yeah, that's what I've noticed too. It's very minimal, or like they'll hyphenate it, like it's a little bit of
Yeah.
both. So maybe you just don't know.
Yeah.
It's so
And
interesting.
not that, it is what it is. It's hard for vets to afford all of the equipment and all of
Yeah.
the costs and everything, but those corporations put quotas on them,
Hmm.
how much prescription food they have to sell, how many
Hmm.
prescriptions they write. There's
Hmm.
quotas they have to meet. So you just have to be more of an advocate if you're going to a corporate owned vet.
Absolutely. I had a friend who worked for one of those, and she was telling me about every like quarter they would have a meeting with like their regional office or whatever, and no matter what kind of numbers they did, they were like, okay, but next time do better. Okay, but next time do better. Okay, but next
Ah,
time sell more medication. Next time shorten up your appointment so that way you can see more people quicker and sell more things. And it's just, what? Why are we here?
yeah.
What then this is just a business, and I get it, like we're business owners. I need to put food on my table as well, but the passion has to come first.
And it's hard enough figuring out what's wrong with an animal when they can't talk and they can't tell you how they feel,
Mm-hmm.
let alone you add in the pressures of corporations and everything. So, it's a tough. It's just always something.
Yeah,
Always something.
it's always something. Well, Toni, thank you so much for your time and being with me, being here with me today. I learned a lot. I did. I was like, oh, her and I were not on the same page. She's obviously been doing this a little bit longer, but I have a couple of different supplements and companies that I'm going to go look up, and I'm very interested to learn more about them and to share them with my clients. Can you tell my listeners where they can learn about you and maybe listen to you as well?
Sure. Thank you. So my podcast is Toni Unleashed, and it's available on all platforms wherever you can get them. And my website is toniunleashed.com. I'm on Facebook, Toni Unleashed. My Instagram is Toni.unleashed. So
That
there
one
you have
change.
it. And Stephanie, thank you so much. I enjoyed the conversation. I think it's great. And just have to keep fighting the good fight.
Yes, ma'am, we do.
Yeah.
Alrighty. We'll see you guys in the next time. Bye. Thank you,
Okay,
Toni.
bye-bye.
Now, that might be the end of the episode, but the fun doesn't have to stop here. Follow us on social media. I'd love to connect with you. We have quite a few social media platforms. For nutrition and holistic pet care tips, follow me on TikTok and Instagram at Steph the Pro Dog Mom. You can find fun training tips on Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram at Pup Pup and Away SA. If you're in San Antonio and you want to bring your dog to us for boarding, training, socialization, and nutrition, come find us. But if you're not in San Antonio, we do training and nutrition sessions virtually. Yes, they can be just as effective, I promise. Please rate, review, and subscribe to my podcast on whatever platform you listen on, and please, please, please share with a friend. The positive reinforcement of knowing people actually listen to this and find it valuable helps motivate me to keep on recording. We'll see you guys at the next episode.